The boardroom was his kingdom, but the quiet walls of his mansion felt like a prison. Ethan Cole, a billionaire CEO with piercing eyes and a reputation for control, could close billion-dollar deals before lunch but failed miserably at comforting his daughter when she cried at night. Since his wife's sudden death 2 years ago, his life had been a balancing act between corporate empires and the tender needs of a 7-year-old girl named Lily. She loved music, her mother's passion, but Ethan's calendar didn't allow time to teach her himself. So, with his assistant's help, he hired what was supposed to be the finest piano teacher in the city, except fate, as it often does, had other plans. When the doorbell rang that rainy afternoon, Ethan opened it to find not the distinguished, gray-haired maestro he expected, but a woman in her early 30s, balancing a worn satchel on one shoulder and clutching the tiny hand of a boy about Lily's age. Her name was Grace. She looked nervous, her hair damp from the storm, and when she introduced herself, Ethan's brows furrowed in confusion. She was not the teacher his assistant had booked. A scheduling mix-up, she explained, cheeks flushing as if she'd intruded. Ethan nearly dismissed her right then, but Lily's wide eyes fixed on the boy at Grace's side and whispered, "Daddy, can they stay?" It was Lily's voice, soft and pleading, that disarmed him. For the first time in weeks, Ethan saw excitement on her face. Against his better judgment, he allowed Grace to step inside. The grand piano in the living room had been covered in dust since his wife's passing, but Grace brushed it lightly with her hand as though touching an old friend. She asked Lily to sit beside her, and in a matter of minutes, the room filled with the hesitant yet sweet sound of keys pressed by small fingers. Grace guided gently, never raising her voice, her patience painting colors back into the air. Ethan stood silently, struck not only by her skill but by the way his daughter's laughter returned, like sunlight breaking through clouds. After the lesson, Ethan intended to thank her and send her away, but Lily clung to Grace's hand and begged for another session. Grace hesitated, explaining she wasn't an official music teacher, just a single mother who once dreamed of being a concert pianist until life took a different turn. She worked odd jobs to support her son, Noah, who peeked curiously around the house while Lily showed him her toys. Ethan felt a tug in his chest he didn't expect. Against every rule he lived by, he hired her on the spot, telling himself it was temporary until the real teacher could be found. The following weeks unfolded differently than anything Ethan had planned. Grace came every Thursday, her laughter softening the sharp edges of the mansion. Lily flourished, practicing piano with a joy Ethan hadn't seen in her since her mother's passing. Noah and Lily became inseparable, their giggles echoing through the halls. And slowly, to Ethan's surprise, Grace's presence seeped beyond the music lessons. She cooked with Lily in the kitchen, taught her songs that weren't on any syllabus, and even coaxed Ethan to sit at the piano one evening. His hands were stiff, his notes clumsy, but the way Grace smiled at him as if he belonged there made something stir in his chest. Yet, beneath the growing warmth was Ethan's fear. He built empires by controlling risk, and Grace was everything he couldn't calculate. She wasn't polished like the circles he moved in, and her life was messy. She admitted she struggled with rent, and her old car broke down more often than it ran. He told himself his daughter needed stability, not the uncertainty Grace carried. But every time he thought of dismissing her, he remembered Lily's laughter. And the way Grace's music seemed to heal cracks no amount of wealth could touch. His heart warred with his head, a battle he wasn't used to losing. One Friday evening, a corporate crisis pulled Ethan back into his world of boardrooms and numbers. He came home late, his tie loosened, only to find Grace still at the house, sitting beside Lily who had fallen asleep against her shoulder. She whispered, she didn't want to go to bed without playing her song for you. Ethan stood frozen, guilt piercing him. His daughter longed for his presence, yet it was Grace who filled the emptiness. He realized then that Grace wasn't just teaching Lily music, she was giving her back a piece of her childhood. And without meaning to, she was teaching Ethan too. But the walls Ethan had built around his life weren't easily broken. One night at a charity gala, a business associate noticed Grace picking Lily up from the event and made a sly remark about Ethan's inappropriate nanny. The sting of judgment clawed at him. He pulled back, canceling lessons under the pretense of restructuring Lily's schedule. Grace didn't fight it, though her eyes dimmed as she packed her things. Lily cried for hours, asking why her friend couldn't come anymore, but Ethan hardened himself. Love, he told himself, was dangerous. Love had already taken his wife. He wouldn't risk losing again. Weeks passed, and though Ethan's house was pristine, it felt emptier than ever. Lily refused to play the piano, and Noah's absence left a hollow silence in the halls. Ethan buried himself in work, but even the billion-dollar contracts felt meaningless. Then one evening, Lily wandered into his office with tears streaking her cheeks. "Daddy," she whispered, "music doesn't sound the same without Grace." The words pierced him deeper than any hostile takeover ever could. He realized he had made the mistake of treating Grace as a liability when she had been the only thing bringing his family back to life. Driven by a mix of desperation and humility, Ethan drove across town to Grace's modest apartment. The building was old, the walls chipped, a stark contrast to his mansion, yet warm light spilled from her window as Noah's laughter carried into the night. Grace opened the door with surprise, holding her son close. Ethan stumbled through an apology, admitting he had been afraid of what people thought, afraid of losing control, afraid of caring again. Grace's eyes softened, but she shook her head gently. "Ethan, your daughter needs consistency, not someone who can be dismissed when it's inconvenient." Her words were a mirror, showing him the truth. Ethan didn't give up. He began showing up at her door, not with grand gestures but with genuine ones. He fixed her broken car. He invited her and Noah to small dinners, where he actually cooked, much to Lily's delight. Slowly, Grace saw the walls he carried begin to crumble. He wasn't just a CEO in a tailored suit, he was a father aching to learn how to be present, a man haunted by grief but yearning for something real. And though Grace guarded her heart, she couldn't deny the way Ethan's laughter grew freer around her, nor the way her son smiled brighter when Ethan joined their games. Their bond deepened through small moments. Ethan watched Grace braid Lily's hair with gentle care, and Grace saw Ethan kneel to tie Noah's shoes before school. They became a patchwork family, not perfect, but stitched together by love and music. When Grace finally invited Ethan to listen to her play a piece she had once dreamed of performing on stage, his eyes glistened. She had given up her dream to raise her son, yet the music lived inside her still. Ethan, moved beyond words, promised to support her dream while embracing her reality. For the first time, Grace believed someone truly saw her. But life, as always, tested them. A sudden business deal required Ethan to relocate overseas temporarily. He wrestled with the decision, fearing history would repeat, his work taking priority over the people who mattered. Grace surprised him, though, reminding him that love wasn't about grand gestures but about showing up, even from afar. She told him she believed in him, in the man he was becoming. That faith steadied him in ways no boardroom victory ever could. And when he returned months later, stepping off the plane to find Grace and their children waiting, he knew the choice he'd made was the right one. The transformation was gradual but profound. Ethan learned to put down his phone during dinner, to clap at Lily's piano recitals with tears of pride in his eyes, to laugh with Noah until his stomach hurt. Grace learned to trust again, to let someone share her burdens, to believe that love didn't have to mean loss. Together, they built something fragile yet strong. A family forged not by perfect circumstances but by resilience and choice. On the anniversary of his wife's passing, Ethan gathered everyone at the grand piano. With trembling fingers, he played the simple tune Lily had first learned from Grace. His daughter joined in, her laughter spilling into the notes, and Grace's hands soon followed, weaving the melody into something beautiful. Noah clapped along, filling the room with joy. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't feel weighed down by grief. Instead, he felt gratitude, for the past, for the love he lost, and for the love he had found again. The mansion no longer echoed with emptiness. It pulsed with life, with piano keys and children's laughter, with the aroma of dinners shared at a messy table, with the sound of Grace's quiet humming as she tucked the kids into bed. Ethan often marveled at how a simple mistake, hiring the wrong teacher, had led to the greatest ride of his life. He realized fate doesn't always give us what we expect, but often, it gives us exactly what we need. In time, Ethan and Grace stood hand in hand, watching their children perform a duet at a small recital. Their faces glowed with pride, not just for the music, but for the life they had created together. It wasn't the life Ethan had envisioned in his carefully controlled world, nor the life Grace had once dreamed of on concert stages. But it was theirs, messy, imperfect, and utterly beautiful. Ethan leaned down and whispered to Grace, "You didn't just teach my daughter music. You taught me how to live again." Grace's eyes shimmered with tears, and for once, Ethan didn't hold back. He pulled her close, knowing this was no longer about fear, or control, or appearances. It was about love, raw, uncalculated, and healing. And as their children played on, the melody carrying through the room, they both knew they had found a forever kind of harmony. The world would still know Ethan Cole as a powerful CEO, but those closest to him knew his true title: father, partner, and man redeemed by love. And Grace, once the wrong teacher, had become the missing piece that turned their fractured lives into a song worth listening to. Together, they proved that the most beautiful symphonies often begin with mistakes, but end with grace.